The human mind is the most fascinating and terrifying place we will ever encounter, not because it hides monsters or miracles, but because it hides ourselves. We spend a lifetime searching for meaning, chasing happiness, avoiding pain, and pretending to understand what moves us. Yet beneath all our words and actions lies something we cannot quite grasp. Freud once said that we are not masters in our own house. At first, this sounds poetic, maybe even dramatic, but what he meant is that we are ruled by forces we cannot see, desires we refuse to acknowledge, and memories that live on even when we believe they've died. He saw that the human mind is not a straight line, but a labyrinth, and that most people wander through it blindfolded, terrified of what they might touch if they dared to remove the cloth. If you've ever wondered why you keep repeating the same mistakes, why love always seems to hurt, or why happiness slips away the moment you reach for it, you've already brushed against Freud's truth. He believed that beneath every conscious thought lies a river of unconscious impulses, fears, fantasies, longings, all trying to find a way out. We repress what we cannot face, and that repression shapes everything: our relationships, our choices, even our illnesses. Freud's discovery wasn't just about dreams or childhood. It was about the hidden logic of our suffering. He understood that pain has a purpose, that every symptom is a story trying to be told, and that the cure begins the moment we dare to listen. In Freud's time, people thought madness belonged to asylums, not to the quiet souls walking among us. He changed that forever. He showed that the mind of a so-called healthy person is not so different from that of someone considered insane. Both are haunted by what was once unbearable. Both are ruled by the same invisible laws. We all repress, we all project, we all disguise our truths behind laughter, sarcasm, or silence. Freud knew that the line between sanity and madness is not a wall, but a whisper. When you laugh at something that isn't funny, when you say one name but mean another, when you feel anxiety for no reason at all, it's your unconscious knocking at the door. Maybe you felt it too, that strange tug in your chest when you meet someone new and feel as if you've known them forever, or the way you sabotage a good thing because it feels too peaceful, too unfamiliar. Freud would say you are not reacting to the present but reliving the past. The child you once were is still inside, seeking recognition, replaying the old wounds, hoping for a different ending. That is the mystery of the human mind. We live in time, but our emotions do not. The body grows, the face changes, the years pass, but the inner child remains frozen at the scene of the first pain. Before we go deeper into this labyrinth, I want to invite you to stay with me, to explore this mystery together. This channel is a space where we gently lift the veil of the unconscious, where we dare to look at what we've always feared. If you feel something stirring as you listen, maybe a quiet sadness, maybe curiosity, consider subscribing. Not because you owe me anything, but because this journey deserves witnesses. Healing happens when we are no longer alone with our silence. Freud knew that people are divided beings, that every I is also a we. Inside you lives a child who wanted to be loved, a teenager who learned to hide, and an adult who pretends not to care. The mind builds layers upon layers of defense to protect what once felt unbearable, but those defenses become the very prison we cannot escape. When you say "I'm fine," while your eyes betray pain, when you work too hard to avoid thinking or chase affection to fill an invisible void, you are living the script written by your unconscious. Freud did not invent this truth. He revealed it. There's something both tragic and beautiful in the idea that our pain has meaning. Freud believed that symptoms are not enemies to be destroyed, but messages to be decoded. The anxiety that grips your chest might be your mind's way of saying you've betrayed yourself somewhere along the way. The depression that dulls your days might be your soul's silent protest against the mask you've been forced to wear. The body remembers what the mind denies. Every tear, every tension, every unexplained fatigue is the echo of something you once couldn't speak. Now pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what part of you has been silenced for too long? Which memory still pulls the strings of your present? In Freud's language, this is the return of the repressed, the unfinished story trying to find its voice. Maybe it comes through dreams, maybe through sudden irritation or irrational fear, or maybe through a pattern that keeps repeating, like loving those who cannot love you back. If this resonates with you, tell me in the comments. What do you think your unconscious might be trying to tell you? You can even copy and paste this if you'd like. I think my unconscious is trying to tell me that. Then finish the sentence with whatever comes to your heart. Sometimes the first words are the truest, and sharing them might be the first act of freedom. Freud was often misunderstood because people wanted him to be a scientist of the soul when, in truth, he was a poet of human suffering. His theories about the unconscious, repression and dreams were not mere ideas, they were mirrors. He gave humanity a language for its own mystery. Before Freud, people suffered without knowing why. After Freud, we learned that our suffering speaks in slips of the tongue, in dreams, in desires we dare not admit. He once said that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. That phrase is more than beautiful, it's precise. In dreams, the censorship of the mind weakens and the forbidden finds form. The forgotten mother, the feared father, the lost love, the shame, all return in disguise, woven into stories that seem absurd but are more truthful than waking life. When Freud analyzed dreams, he wasn't decoding symbols like a magician. He was listening to what had been silenced. But here lies the painful part of his discovery. We don't actually want to know the truth about ourselves. We resist it with all our strength. We prefer distraction, comfort, control. We build entire lives around avoiding the real question, what do I truly feel? That's why Freud said that psychoanalysis is not a path to happiness, but to freedom. Freedom from illusion, from repetition, from the invisible chains of our past. Every time you recognize your own pattern, when you notice that you're repeating your mother's sadness, or your father's anger, or your own childhood fears, you are already waking up. Freud called this process making the unconscious conscious. It's not about erasing the past, but about remembering it differently, with compassion instead of fear. Freud often said that civilization itself is built upon repression, and the more we advance, the more we must hide what is raw and instinctive within us. He believed that guilt is the price we pay for becoming human. Think about that for a moment. Guilt, that quiet but relentless ache that follows us even when we've done nothing wrong, is not simply a moral feeling. It is the echo of a battle inside us, between what we desire and what we've been taught to deny. Every culture, every religion, every law is built upon the same invisible foundation, the need to control our impulses. But when instinct is repressed too tightly, it doesn't disappear. It burrows deeper, taking new shapes: anxiety, shame, depression, perfectionism. Freud called this the return of the repressed, and it is the reason why no matter how rational or successful we become, something within us still trembles. From childhood, we learn that certain emotions are unacceptable. A child who cries too much is told to be strong. One who shows anger is told to behave. One who longs for closeness is told not to be needy. Slowly, we stop expressing what we feel, and instead, we become what others can love. Freud understood that this process, the taming of the child by the demands of the world, is the origin of neurosis. The adult who never feels good enough is simply the child who learned that love had conditions. The adult who fears abandonment is still the child who was left crying in silence. The adult who cannot say no is still the child who was punished for wanting too much. Freud saw that our emotional life is not linear, but circular. We keep returning to the same places until we dare to confront them consciously. In the core of Freud's theory lies something we rarely talk about anymore: the Oedipus complex. It's not about forbidden love in a literal sense, but about the drama of dependency and separation that every child must face. To love one parent and compete with the other is not pathology. It's the birth of individuality. Through that conflict, we learn that love has limits, that we cannot possess those we need, and that growing up means renouncing certain desires to become ourselves. But when this process is interrupted, when the child is overly attached, or when love feels mixed with fear, a part of the psyche remains trapped. That trapped energy becomes the fuel for later conflicts. Jealousy, insecurity, obsession. We repeat the emotional geometry of our first loves in every new relationship, not because we choose to, but because our unconscious demands a resolution. Freud's insight was painful because it stripped away the illusion of innocence. He showed that even our purest acts are ambivalent, that love and aggression coexist in every heart. The same person we adore, we sometimes secretly resent. The one we protect, we might unconsciously harm. The more we deny this ambivalence, the more we project it outward, turning our inner conflict into outer enemies. He wrote that the price of civilization is discontent, and you can feel that truth everywhere. In our anxiety, our endless need to prove ourselves, our hunger for validation. We repress desire to fit in, and in doing so, we become strangers to our own bodies, living minds that have forgotten their roots in flesh. Imagine how lonely it must have been for Freud to see all this when no one else could. He faced ridicule for suggesting that polite men and women were driven by sexual and aggressive impulses. Yet he persisted, not out of scandal, but compassion. He saw that to understand the mind, one must first dare to face its darkness. He listened to his patients not as a doctor searching for disease, but as a witness listening to forgotten souls. In the quiet of his consulting room, he heard what the world refused to hear, the secret pain behind ordinary lives. Today, we live in an age obsessed with self-optimization, where everything must be cured, fixed, improved. But Freud would remind us that not everything broken needs to be repaired. Some things only need to be understood. The unconscious does not demand perfection, it demands recognition. The parts of you that you reject are not enemies, but exiles longing to return home. The anxiety you call weakness may be the voice of your neglected self. The sadness you label depression might be mourning for the authentic life you never lived. When you begin to listen, something changes. The symptom loses its grip because it is finally being heard. It is not easy to face what Freud called the death drive, that strange pull toward repetition, destruction, and the familiar pain we secretly crave. Have you ever noticed how sometimes, even when we know something will hurt, we go back to it anyway? The toxic relationship, the self-sabotage, the habit that numbs us. Freud saw this not as madness, but as evidence of an unconscious compulsion, an attempt by the psyche to master what once felt unbearable. The mind repeats until it remembers differently. Each repetition is a cry. This time I will not be powerless. But until we make the pattern conscious, we remain trapped in its invisible web. You might be wondering then, what is freedom according to Freud? It is not the absence of conflict, but the awareness of it. To be free is to know one's own contradictions and to live without denying them. It is to accept that love will always carry traces of loss, that desire will always be mixed with fear, and that happiness is fragile precisely because it is real. Freud's vision of maturity was not about conquering the unconscious, but befriending it. The goal of analysis was never to erase the darkness, but to give it words. Once you can name your demons, they stop possessing you. In the modern world, we've replaced confession with consumption. Instead of facing our emotions, we medicate them, scroll them away, disguise them with productivity. But the unconscious does not disappear. It waits, patient and silent beneath the noise of daily life. It speaks through the body, through sudden exhaustion, through irrational anger or longing. Sometimes it visits in dreams that wake us at 3 a.m., where we see the faces of those we've lost or the places we swore we'd forgotten. Freud would say that every dream, every symptom, is the psyche's attempt to heal. If we could only listen without judgment, we might finally understand that what we fear most about ourselves is what makes us human. There's a certain tenderness in Freud's pessimism. He never promised happiness, he promised clarity. And clarity, though painful, is sacred. When you see yourself truthfully, not as you wish to be, but as you are, something softens. You begin to forgive the parts of you that were once condemned. You begin to see that your parents, too, were shaped by their own unconscious wounds, that every generation inherits what the previous one could not resolve. Freud called this the transference of the past into the present. Healing, then, is not about cutting ties with history, but rewriting its emotional script. So perhaps the mystery of the human mind is not a puzzle to be solved, but a story to be told, over and over, until it loses its power to wound. Every time we dare to speak our truth, every time we allow a hidden feeling to surface, we reclaim a little more of ourselves. That, to Freud, was the true miracle, turning pain into meaning. Freud once said that where the id was, the ego shall be. A simple phrase, but one that holds the entire promise of human growth. What he meant is that wherever blind instinct and unconscious chaos once ruled, awareness could take root. It is the most hopeful idea he ever offered, though it is often misunderstood. He did not believe in erasing desire or controlling it like a dictator over a wild land. He believed in transforming it through understanding. To make the unconscious conscious is not to destroy it, but to weave it into the fabric of life so that we may live with more authenticity and less fear. In that sense, every honest conversation, every tear that finds its words, every moment of self-recognition is an act of quiet revolution. Today, we live surrounded by the very problems Freud predicted: anxiety without name, pleasure without fulfillment, connection without intimacy. We have learned to speak about everything but to feel almost nothing. We chase explanations, diagnoses, identities, and yet the real question, what is happening inside me right now, remains unanswered. Freud's legacy reminds us that the mystery of the human mind is not out there in theories or brain scans, but right here in the tremor beneath our daily roles. It is in the way we love, the way we hurt, the way we dream. To understand the unconscious is to realize that nothing we feel is random. The anger you project on a stranger, the attraction that defies logic, the sudden sadness in the middle of joy. These are not accidents. They are letters written by your inner life, begging to be read. The unconscious speaks in metaphors, in symbols, in slips of the tongue, and strange coincidences. Freud taught us that the more we ignore its language, the louder it becomes, until it manifests as crisis. What we call breakdowns are often the psyche's last desperate attempt to be heard. If you've ever experienced a moment where everything fell apart, a relationship ending, a loss, a collapse you didn't see coming, you might later realize that something deeper was breaking through. The unconscious doesn't care for comfort, it cares for truth. Sometimes it destroys what is false so that something real can emerge. That's why so many people find transformation only after pain. Freud saw suffering not as a punishment, but as a doorway. When pain finally strips us of our illusions, we are left with what is raw and true. And from there, real healing can begin. He also understood that we never truly grow alone. The analytic relationship, in Freud's view, was a place where two unconscious minds meet, each reflecting the other. The patient projects old feelings onto the analyst: love, anger, fear. And through that mirror, the past becomes visible. In everyday life, this happens constantly. We meet someone and instantly feel comfort or suspicion, attraction or hostility. We think it's about them, but it's really about us, about old emotional ghosts that still live within us. Freud called this transference, and once we see it, the world starts to look different. Every connection becomes an opportunity for self-discovery. Imagine then if we approached life with that same curiosity instead of judgment. If instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" we asked, "What is my unconscious trying to show me?" Perhaps the people who trigger us most are the ones who carry fragments of our own repressed story. Perhaps the dreams that disturb us most are the ones that hold our lost vitality. Freud's great gift was to teach us that meaning hides in discomfort, that there is wisdom even in madness, and that every symptom is a form of communication. Of course, Freud was not infallible. Some of his ideas were bound to his era, his theories of femininity, his insistence on sexuality as the central drive of all life. These can feel narrow today, but beneath those specifics lies a deeper insight that remains timeless. We are strangers to ourselves. Every generation must rediscover that truth in its own language. Neuroscience may map the brain, but it still cannot map longing. Algorithms may predict our behavior, but they cannot interpret our dreams. Only self-reflection can do that, and that is where Freud's shadow still walks beside us. He turned introspection into a science of the soul, but at heart, it was always an act of compassion. He believed that every human being carries a secret tragedy, and that to speak it aloud is to be reborn. In his quiet office in Vienna, people told stories they had never dared to tell. They spoke of forbidden loves, of shame, of fantasies they didn't understand. Freud listened without condemnation. He was the first to offer humanity something radical, a place where the truth of one's feelings could exist without being judged. That, more than any theory, is what changed the world. The modern therapist, the friend who listens deeply, even the artist who turns pain into beauty, they all carry Freud's legacy. Whenever you share something hidden and feel lighter, you are experiencing what he called catharsis, the release of emotion through recognition. It is not about forgetting, but remembering differently. It's not about curing pain, but transforming it into meaning. The unconscious remains, but its power shifts when it is seen. So where does this leave us? Here and now in the 21st century. Perhaps the real mystery of the human mind is not that it is unknowable, but that it is infinite in its capacity to create and heal. Freud's work reminds us that awareness is a kind of grace. The moment you stop running from your feelings and start listening to them, the battle changes. You begin to see that the monster you feared in the dark was just a wounded child waiting for light. You begin to understand that love, even in its most painful forms, was never a mistake but a message. You begin to forgive not only others, but the parts of yourself that once felt unforgivable. If you've listened this far, take a moment for yourself. Let your shoulders relax. Feel your breath return. You've just walked through the corridors of your own mind, guided by one of the few thinkers who dared to enter his. Freud's mystery is not about theories, it's about courage. The courage to face the unconscious, to live without masks, to feel what is real. And if you found pieces of yourself in these words, remember that recognition is the first step toward transformation. Before we close, I want to thank you for staying here, for allowing yourself to feel, to think, to remember. This channel exists for souls like yours, curious, sensitive, searching. If this journey moved you, consider subscribing, not out of obligation, but because you deserve to keep exploring what lies beneath the surface. Every new video is a quiet invitation to look deeper, to see the beauty in what was once hidden. Freud taught us that healing does not come from perfection, but from honesty. The mind will always be a mystery, but within that mystery lies our humanity, fragile, flawed, and luminous. So perhaps the question is not what Freud knew that no one else realized, but whether we are brave enough to realize it now. Tell me, after hearing this, what do you feel awakening inside you? What truth of your own are you beginning to see more clearly? Maybe it's something small, a memory, a sentence, a feeling. Whatever it is, it matters. You can even write it below. After listening, I think my hidden truth might be, because sometimes healing begins not with answers, but with the courage to speak. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing Freud ever taught, that by turning toward our own darkness, we find the light that was there all along.